like to talk about one of the important aspects of Vedic astrology. In fact, one of the important houses of Vedic astrology, which is eighth house. It is also uh, it is perceived as the most dreadful, fearful house, but in fact, in reality, it's not. Eighth house can bring many blessings to an individual um, if it is in good dignity. Suppose if the eighth lord is strong and if benefic planet is in eighth house, then it definitely blesses individual with many comforts. So, why eighth house is called as house of longevity? That is first thing we need to understand. That is the most prominent house that assures longevity in one's chart. So when there is a balarista or uh, and the chart is actually prone to many Maraka planets or Maraka dashas, there are two things that would save an individual from Maraka. So one is Jupiter, Jupiter's aspect, and other is eighth house. So it is important that the Lord of eighth house to be positioned very well in an individual chart for a good longevity. Because it is seventh to second house and second to seventh house. Eighth house is considered as Ayusthana, a house which is capable of blessing one with long life. Because in Vedic astrology, there are two houses, especially we look for Maraka. One is the second house and the other is the seventh house. So, eighth is, seventh to second, so Maraka of Maraka. So, Maraka of Maraka is nothing but life. And it is second to seventh, so it's a Maraka to Maraka house. So, if we understand logically, it's a negative of negative, a positive. So that's why eighth house has become the most prominent house in giving long life to an individual. Uh, and also, eighth house blesses an individual with marital bliss, um, and it shows inheritance, it shows giant assets, it shows in-laws, and it shows a certain transformation in anyone's chart. If eighth house dominates, suppose if eighth house or eighth lord receives maximum strength out of all planets, then it's very difficult to predict that particular chart. Because eighth house always gives sudden changes. So people say eighth house is accident, so it's not accident, a sudden change. So when there is a sudden event that happens in our life at any point of time, we feel some kind of turbulence. So that's why eighth house is known for accidents, but it's not. But technically, it's not. It has nothing to do with accident. Yeah, of course, because Mars is a natural karaka for eighth house, so Mars is for accidents. So that's why eighth house has got that negative flavor. So how to see if eighth house is strong or eighth lord is strong in an individual chart? So there are two aspects. Okay, we need to see the Ashtakvarga points of second house and seventh house, and we need to compare them against the Ashtakvarga points of eighth house. So ideally, for a person to have long life, even though the person sees ups and downs with respect to illness or accidents, we can say the person will definitely come out of the situation and survive, looking at the strength of 8th house and 8th lord. If the Ashtakvarga points of 8th house and 8th lord, they are in good dignity, then it's a blessing for an individual. Why it is very important house in out of all 12 houses? Because we have many aspects in your life. Everybody wants to have very good education, intellect, knowledge, career, riches, very good business, very good wife, luxuries, comforts, vehicles. If a chart is not promising a good health, what is the use of having all those things? So that's why 8th house is very important. Even though the Maraka planets, they attain great strength, if 8th house has at least two planets positioned in 8th house, those two planets, they are enough to block the Maraka planets from causing Maraka or death to an individual. So such a great house 8th house is. There should be at least two planets in a good dignity in 8th house. And also 8th house is known for this Kundalini, to see whether this person will be able to raise his Kundalini. We need to look at 8th house. The strength of 8th house actually plays a major role, because Kundalini is one of the biggest transformation that ever happens in an individual's life. So suppose the 8th lord is in Kendra, especially suppose 8th lord is in 1st house, 8th lord is in 4th house or 10th house or 7th house, then it promises an individual with a very good longevity. If 8th lord has a connection with Ketu, yes, chances are high that this person experiences Kundalini. The Rahu and Ketu's strong connection with her 8th house makes a person a mystic monk, a Kundalini practitioner, if he properly channelizes that energy. And it is also, 8th house is also a blessing for marital bliss. Why? Because so nowadays we see people get married and they get separated very soon, within few months or within a few years of getting married. So if a person has a strong 8th house, a strong 8th house denies divorce, it denies separation. So especially I have seen some charts, some patterns where people who have Saturn in 8th house and Jupiter in 8th house, even though they have seen turmoil, ups and downs in their marital life, even though they had disputes, fights, but finally they ended up living together. And also 8th house gives the satisfaction of the efforts and the actions that were put. If 8th lord is well positioned, then this person will definitely see the results of the efforts that he made. And also 8th house shows our hidden enemies also, because 8th house is a third house from 6th house. So enemies communication, enemies, our enemies willful actions, all bad deeds can be seen from 8th house. If 8th house is afflicted and it doesn't have any benefic aspect of Jupiter nor connection with Jupiter, then it will make the individual suffer from hidden enemies. And also, if we have major concentration of chart is in 8th house, like there are two or more than two planets in 8th house, then this person maintains shared resources, a pool of funds, a pool of assets is maintained by this particular individual who has a strong 8th house. And they have strong intuition levels also. They are very good at astrology and mystic things. So it is the most complex house, as I mentioned. If an individual chart has got much concentration in 8th house, then the events, then it's very difficult to predict any events for that particular chart, because it indicates transformation, change. An astrologer sees that this person would be doing this thing after this, but he would be doing something else, because the person, he never knows what he would be doing next moment. That is what 8th house is. And also 8th house stands for all hidden things, occult things. There is in Kundalini a prominent Rahu Ketu connection with 8th and 11th houses makes a person a very good Kundalini practitioner. Friends, this is my analysis about 8th house. If you like the video, please click on like button. Also subscribe to my video. If you are looking for more detailed information about 8th house, please visit my site trendingastro.com, and there is a special page for 8th house. Thank you very much.